स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय
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 नारायणं नमस्कृत्यं नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत् नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवति उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी कृष्णे स्वधाम उपगते धर्मज्ञानादिभिः सह कलौ नष्टदृशामीश पुराणार्को धुनोदितः. So today we're going to discuss this verse which tells about about the travel of the devotees. Why do devotees travel? So this verse is important about that. But before that, let's give a background of how last time I discussed from chapter 3rd canto, 4th chapter. When I was discussing the verses 14 to 18, in which Uddhava is saying to the Lord that I prefer your service, not the 4 purusharthas, that is dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. And then he talks about the different bewilderments that we discussed last time. Your activities bewilder even the wise. Then in the 18th verse, he says, kindly explain to me the knowledge of yourself. This is the place, as I was discussing last time, the Prabhasha Tirtha, where Krishna and Uddhava are discussing. And kindly explain to me the knowledge of yourself. And in verse 19 and 20, Lord instructed Uddhava about his Paramam Sthiti, his ultimate supreme position. And then from 21 to 22, to mitigate the separation, Uddhava decided to follow the Lord's instruction to go to Badrikashram. So he wanted him to go to Badrikashram. And Uddhava directed. Then what happens is, then the story comes from that past, like when it, when the story is there and then you see the past thing. So Uddhava was discussing with Vidura, and then he told about when Krishna came to this Prabhasha Kshetra, and he discussed different topics with him. So those different topics are called as Uddhava Gita, which is being described in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So he told the intimate discussions that they had on different topics were being discussed there. And after that, then Uddhava comes back to Vidura, and he says that because he in age he was from Vidura was Vidura is very advanced in age, and he is he's younger. So he thinks that how should I instruct Vidura? He's thinking that I'm not qualified for that. And to put that etiquette, like Maryada Vyatikrama, there is a term called Maryada Vyatikrama. Means he doesn't want to be keeping in Maryada, because then he tells that, oh, that time when Krishna was discussing with me, Maitreya Muni was also there. So you please go to Maitreya Muni and he would discuss all these topics, all your questions that you had. That is in the first chapter, in the 3rd canto, 1st chapter. He had many questions for Uddhava, and he answered some of the questions about the whereabouts of Krishna, where he is, and all those things. But then for the other topics, he wanted him to go to Maitreya Rishi, and Maitreya would describe that, because he also heard the conversation that Krishna had with Uddhava, because when Krishna was having that conversation, Maitreya Rishi also joined in. Then Krishna decided to depart. Then he again goes back to the story saying that Krishna decided to depart and thought that Uddhava can, and then he told Uddhava, you can disseminate the knowledge that I have given to you. Because why? There are qualities of Uddhava that is being discussed in the verse, and that is the verse 31st verse, which says Uddhava is not inferior to me in any way because he is never affected by Maya, Krishna says. And Uddhava, and then ask him to go to Badrikashram, where he can do his sadhana as well as preach the glories of Lord. So Uddhava followed the instructions and he went to Badrikashram. So, and then from 33 to 34, the Lord's glories. Vidura heard from Uddhava about the Lord's appearance, activities, and disappearance. He was all telling all those activities. Uddhava, before leaving, he told these things to Uddhava, and whatever rest is there, he wanted to talk to, wanted Vidura to go and talk to Maitreya Rishi to go on deeper topics of his questions. But during his description, Uddhava also described how Vidura was being remembered by the Supreme Lord Krishna, what he has done, and how he is so instrumental in helping Pandavas, and what kind of devotion Vidura had. So when Vidura heard about his glories from the mouth of Uddhava and what Krishna told to Uddhava, he became overwhelmed, and he started to cry very loudly, could not keep his tears. And then in 36 words, Maitreya meets Vidura meets Maitreya on the bank of Ganga, because he is going towards. He met actually Uddhava on his way to Badrikashram near Yamuna river. I guess it is close to somewhere passing on Vrindavan, going towards the Badrikashram. At that point, Vidura meets Uddhava, and then he instructs him to go towards the bank of Ganga, where Maitreya Rishi is residing, and ask for more queries. And this chapter starts with Vidura's talks with Maitreya. Means that is the title of this chapter. So if you see in nutshell, from 3.1 to 3.4, these chapters, 4 chapters, describe the nature of the Supreme Lord, or the shelter of creation. As we discussed, there are 10 items that has been discussed in Srimad Bhagavatam. One is called Ashraya. So Ashraya is in greater detail. It is being, that is Supreme Lord, is been defined greatly in the 10th canto. But Uddhava also gives a glimpse in those 4 chapters, talking about Krishna and his pastimes. And then now in 3.5, in this chapter, Maitreya begins the topic of Sarga, the primary creation, Anga. That is the primary creation. So from 1 to 9, Vidura's question to Maitreya Rishi is there when he meets. So he asks the question, how to mitigate distress. I think you heard that last Wednesday. Now this question this is not a question, this is just a comment, saying that great philanthropic souls travel on earth for what? So in this verse, it is being described. So let's recite this verse. Janasya Krishnad Vimukhasya Daivad.
Janasya Krishna Vimukasya Daiva
Adharmashilasya Sudukhitasya.
Adharmashilasya Sudukhitasya
Anugrahaye Charanti Nunam.
Anugrahayeha Charanti Nunam
Bhutani Bhavyani Janardanasya.
Bhutani Bhavyani Janardanasya.
One more time. Janasya Krishna Vimukhasya Daivad.
Janasya Krishna Vimukasya Daiva
Adharmashilasya Sudukhitasya.
Adharmashilasya Sudukhitasya
Anugrahaye Charanti Nunam.
अनुग्रहाये चरन्ति नूनम्
भूतानि भव्यानि जनार्दनस्य
भूतानि
भव्यानि
भव्यानि
More time. Janasya Krishnad Vimukhasya Daivad
जनस्य कृष्णाद् विमुखस्य दैवात्
Adharmashilasya Sudukhitasya
अधर्मशीलस्य सुदुःखितस्य
Nugrahayeha Charanti Nunam
अनुग्रहाय
अनुग्रहाये
चरन्ति
चरन्ति
नूनम्
नूनम्
Bhutani Bhavyani Janardanasya
भूतानि
भव्यानि जनार्दनस्य
जनार्दनस्य
Do three voluntary recitations.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I can
Hare
try.
Krishna Mataji, yeah, please.
जनस्य कृष्णाद् विमुखस्य दैवात्
Janasya Krishna Vimukhasya Daivad
अधर्मशीलस्य सुदुःखितस्य
Adharmashilasya Sudukhitasya
अनुग्रहाये चरन्ति नूनम्
Anugrahaye Charanti Nunam
भूतानि भव्यानि जनार्दनस्य
Bhutani Bhavyani Janardanasya. Thank you,
Hare
Mataji. Hare Krishna. One more and another one if it is possible.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Janasya Krishna Vimukhasya Daiva
Janasya Krishna Vimukhasya Daivad
Adharmashilasya Sudukhitasya
Adharmashilasya
सुदुःखितस्य
Sudukhitasya
Anugrahaye Hacharanti Nunam
Anugrahaye Charanti
चरन्ति
Nunam
Bhutani Bhavyani Janardanasya
Bhutani
भव्यानि
Janardanasya. Yeah.
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु जी
Hare Krishna Mataji.
जनस्य कृष्णाद् विमुखस्य देवात्
Janasya
जनस्य
Krishna
कृष्णाद् विमुखस्य दैवात्
अधर्मशीलस्य सुदुःखितस्य
Adharmashilasya
अधर्मशीलस्य
Sudukhitasya
सुदुःखितस्य
अनुग्रहाय चरन्ति नूनम्
Anugrahaye
अनुग्रहाये चरन्ति
Charanti
नूनम्
भूतानि भव्यानि जनार्दनस्य
Bhutani
भूतानि
Bhavyani
भव्यानि
Janardanasya.
जनार्दनस्य.
So, as I was mentioning, this verse is telling about the glories of devotees who travel. What is the reason of their travel? And you might have seen in the group, Ujjwala Mataji has shared pictures of Srila Prabhupada traveling and enlightening all the devotees. So you might got a hint there. But let's discuss this verse. So, Janasya means of common people. Krishnad Vimukhasya. Krishnad Vimukha. People who have become, have taken their minds away from Krishna. Why? Because they want to enjoy separate from Krishna. So, Daivat. Daivat means due to the influence of the external energy of the Lord. Because of Daiva, it says, right? Some external powers. So, Janasya Krishna Vimukhasya. Adharmashilasya. Because of that, because they have become Vimukha from Krishna, so Adharmashilasya. So they have engaged in sinful activities, which has like Adharma. Adharma is talking about sinful activities or the activities which is not prescribed to be in the righteous nature. Sudukhitas. And because of that, because of doing those things, they are all unhappy. They are dukhi. Then what do the great souls do? Bhutani Bhavyani Janardanasya. So Janardana is the Supreme Lord. Bhavyani means, Bhutani Bhavyani means the highly elevated souls. What they do? Anugrahayeha, to give them mercy, to give them anugraha. They are charanti nunam. Nunam is nishchit. So they are, because of that, they are traveling. So you can see here, charanti means wander, here nunam means certainly. And bhutani means persons of great philanthropic source. So let's read the translation.
O my Lord, great philanthropic souls travel on the earth on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead to show compassion to the fallen souls who are averse to the sense of subordination to the Lord. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So in this context, in the storyline I told you, who is traveling? Which character is traveling?
Sadhus.
No. Here in this context of the discussion is going on in Srimad Bhagavatam. Who is traveling?
Who is away from the
Who was away from the home and traveling and giving? So here in this case, what did Mataji you told? Mataji?
Sadhus.
Yeah, sadhus, definitely. But in this context, who is that sadhu here?
Oh,
it is Vidura.
Vidura, yeah.
Exactly. So I was asking here. So Vidura is traveling. He went for the pilgrimage and coming back. But also there are two other sadhus that we also discussed. It is Uddhava and
Maitreya.
Maitreya, yes. So they all are, because Uddhava is traveling towards Badrikashram from the getting instruction in the Prabhasa Kshetra, which is in the western part of India, which is near Saurashtra, coming towards the northern part to Badrikashram, which is close to Haridwar. So in between, he met Vidura, who was coming from the other direction, from Saurashtra, and then they both met each other. So what they were doing, they were discussing what? Krishna Katha. So you can see here, O my Lord, great philanthropic souls travel on this earth on behalf of Supreme Personality of Godhead to show compassion to the fallen souls who are averse to the sense of subordination of the Lord. This is the translation. But if you see here it is said Krishna Vimukhasya. So what will happen when people will interact with them? They would become Krishna Sumukhasya. They would see, it will be reverse. They would always be thinking about the Lord, or they would be inclined towards thinking about the Lord. And Adharma Shila will become Dharma Shilasya. And Sudukhasya means Susukhitasya. It is a transformation happening just by the sadhus traveling and spreading the glories of the Lord. And in modern days, as we know, Srila Prabhupada did that. And that's why that you would see in the group, it is described there. So let's read the purport and see what Srila Prabhupada has to say.
Hare Krishna. To be obedient to the wishes of the Supreme Lord is the natural position of every living entity. But due only to past misdeeds, a living being becomes averse to the sense of subordination to the Lord and suffers all the miseries of material existence. No one has anything to do but render devotional service to the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. Therefore, any activities other than transcendental loving service to the Lord is more or less a rebellious action against the Supreme Will. All fruitive activity, empirical philosophy, and mysticism are more or less against the sense of subordination to the Lord, and any living entity engaged in such rebellious activity is more or less condemned by the laws of material nature, which work under the subordination of the Lord. Great unalloyed devotees of the Lord are compassionate towards the fallen, and therefore they travel all over the world with the mission of bringing souls back to Godhead, back to home. Such pure devotees of the Lord carry the message of Godhead in order to deliver the fallen souls, and therefore the common man who is bewildered by the influence of the external energy of the Lord should avail himself of their association. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. So here, Srila Prabhupada starts with a statement, to be obedient to the wishes of Supreme Lord is the natural position of living entity. What is our natural position? Is to be obedient to the wishes. But what is the reason why we are not obedient? Because of our past misdeeds. We become averse to the sense of subordination and we want to lord it over. We have that tendency to become the Lord. And because of doing that, there is suffering, which all the miseries come because of the material existence, daiva, that is being discussed here. So no one has anything to do but render devotional service to the Supreme Lord. That is the constitutional position of the living entity. But what has happened because of the conditioning, because of the external and influence of external energy, and because of the desire of the living entity to enjoy himself away from Krishna, that's what Vimukha says. He had gone away from Krishna. He doesn't want to see what Krishna. If your mukha is towards Krishna, then you can see him and you can understand him. But if you are away from Krishna, it's so difficult to see. So that's why it is being mentioned. And all fruitive activity, empirical philosophy, and mysticism are more or less against the subordination. Everything says against it. Fruitive activity says, no, God doesn't exist. Whatever you do karma, you get the results. Empirical philosophy also says, can you prove God? I have not seen God. So how you can say God exists? Mysticism, kind of a thought process, okay, so something is going on because of some natural laws. And there is no logic how it is going. So that is being, mysticism is there. That's why they never say sense of subordination to the law. Or any living entity engaged in such rebellious activity, that's why it's called a rebellious activity. So most of the activities that we perform without thinking about the Lord is called as rebellious activities. But the laws of nature, nobody can take any restraint from the laws of nature. It will definitely work according to the subordination of the Supreme Lord. Whatever the karma would be, the resultant action would manifest. It will come. No matter what we do, it is binding. It has that rope which is there connected to the reaction. So the action is connected to the reaction both. But when we perform activities to please the Supreme Lord or his devotees, that is called as devotional activity or devotional service, because it is connecting, that same rope is connected to Supreme Lord. So by the association of devotees, the other rope of reaction is no more there. So this bandhana or this thing is severed, and that other attraction is made. And because our attraction is made to the Supreme Lord, so now we can enlighten ourselves by the mercy of the devotees. We will know about Supreme Lord, and ultimately will go to the Param Dham, to his place, the Supreme, or going back to Godhead. So it says, great unalloyed devotees of the Lord are compassionate. So now it is talking about devotees who are wandering, like the sadhus. They go to different places and giving their advice. Like Vidura, in this case, he was going, but he is getting mercy from other sadhus who are also going. Even at one place, in previous cantos, when Vidura visits Pandavas, Yudhishthira Maharaj says that where you go, tirthas are like there, because tirthi kurvanti tirthani. That is that verse which is there in Srimad Bhagavatam in the first canto. So which talks about tirthi kurvanti tirthani. So wherever they are, the tirthas come there. It's not the places tirtha are because of their presence. And it is also said in another instance that what happens when people go to tirthas and go to take bath in Ganga, what happens? The sinful thing goes into Ganga. But when these elevated devotees go and take bath in Ganga, Ganga gets purified because of their presence. That's how the potency of these elevated devotees are. So they are compassionate towards the fallen, and therefore they travel over the world with the mission of bringing souls back to Godhead, back to home. Just to remind them what they have forgotten, what how they are being trapped by the external energy of the Lord, which is also called Maya. Such pure devotees of Lord carry the message of Godhead in order to deliver the fallen souls. And therefore, the common man who is bewildered by the influence of external energy of the Lord should avail himself of their association. So you can imagine Srila Prabhupada coming to the Western world and giving so many souls the knowledge of Krishna consciousness. And by Krishna consciousness, they have all becoming they are understanding the real pleasure, the real happiness which resides within us. What happens? Our tendency is to look for happiness outside, and to get that, we do so many different activities to make ourselves happy. But to understand that real happiness resides with us, we should have a spiritual connection with the Supreme Lord, because that's our eternal position. Unless we go back to our eternal position, we cannot be happy. We want to be happy with the external things, but it is just temporary. And that happiness is also temporary. And one of the lectures I was hearing, it is mentioned that what the happiness, what we see is like, for example, the misery, 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 misery. And when you are just a pausing point, you feel, oh, happiness. It's not because there's a real happiness, because there is an absence of misery. That's why you feel happy. So that fraction of a time we feel so happy. Imagine if that happiness that is not pause, that is really happiness, eternal happiness that we have with connecting with the Supreme Lord. It will be so blissful that it will never end. It will not be Chapala Sukha. It will be Nitya Sukha. And then not only that, and going back to Godhead to have eternal service of the Lord. So with this, what message we have is the sadhus, they wandered the world to spread the glories of the Lord. So we have to follow in their footsteps and also do whatever best we can in our personal lives and with the people we meet to spread the Krishna consciousness movement. So I'll pause here and we'll take any discussion points, any realizations, any corrections. Thank you. I think this is very clear, so that's why there is no realizations and questions, but that's very true. And thank you for this wonderful association that we had. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Branda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.